African Carbon Markets Initiative launch. May I please have your attention? Okay, I think we're almost there. Great. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. My name is Bukholo Joy Kinuendo, and I am the Africa Director and Special Advisor to the UN Climate Change High-Level Champions. And I will be your moderator today. Very excited to get started on the launch of the African Carbon Markets Initiative. That is a partnership between GEP, the Global Energy Alliance for People and Planet, C for All, Sustainable Energy for All, UNECA, and supported by the UN Climate Change High-Level Champions. For us to get started this morning, I will be calling upon our COP27 champion, Dr. Mahmoud Muhildeen, to join me on stage. And I will also be calling Joseph Nganga, the Vice President, Africa Global Energy Alliance for People and Planet. And I'd also like on the stage, Damilola Ogumbi, who is the CEO of Sustainable Energy for All and also the Special Representative for the UNSG. Thank you. And to get us started with opening remarks, I would like to welcome Dr. Mahmoud Muhildeen.
Right, good morning. Thank you so much, Bugulu, for the introduction, and very warm welcome to you all in Sharm el-Sheikh. I hope that you are all enjoying yourselves, having constructive discussions, and we are up to a very important initiative that needs to go through 5 filters to be blessed. Before saying what are the filters, I'd like to recognize the attendance and the support of the President of Kenya, President William Ruto, President of Malawi, President Chakwera, President Nasembe. I'd like to recognize as well the participation of Minister Lee White of Gabon on behalf of President Bongo. And we are happy as well to see with us Minister Abdullahi on behalf of President Buhari. And again, it's a great event that we need to support if it goes through 5 filters. So implementation COP. So are we going to see some implementable measures to have carbon credit markets, a holistic approach to climate and sustainable development? Would this market support just transition? Regional cooperation, which is one of the main features of COP27, not just for Africa, but for Africa and beyond. Is there sufficient work on regional cooperation and integration? And the 4th filter is localization. Will it have benefits to local communities, including farmers and small enterprises? And the last one on finance, is it going to be one of the cosmetic, fashionable, trendy matters that we celebrate for a moment and forget afterwards, or it is going to be with a substantive contribution to the financial architecture of our markets? So these are basically the filters that one uses now in order to minimize any kind of misleading announcements that we stand to regret afterwards if they are not really meeting the impact. I'm happy to say, not just because I trust Bugulu and the team, that these filters have been checked, and there are good substantive arguments for having a carbon credit market that needs really to deal with the requirements for climate adaptation and climate resilience. And as you know, the champions stand for the support of all initiatives that can really get us in a better stance when it comes to the race to resilience. And here, I'm seeing the following in terms of the substance, that the voluntary carbon markets have been growing with an annual rate of 31% from 2016 to 2021. Last year alone, they saw a 50% increase in real demand. Demand for African origin carbon credit had been growing too, at a compounded annual rate of around 36%. And the growth that I just mentioned is coming from a very low base. So we need to put that into consideration before we just cite figures without knowing the substance behind them. And this initiative, as mentioned by Bugulu, is a result of good partnership and collaboration, and stands to get as well some decent support, not just by governments and market participants, but by philanthropies, and including many of the participants in today's event. And I see in the audience the head of Rockefeller Foundation, Mr. Shah, and many others in the room as well, who have been providing great support to the cause of climate action and sustainability at large. The 4 core objectives of this initiative: first is to grow an African credit retirement approach to deal with the challenges we are facing, at least by 19-fold. You need to set a price for floor for African credits traded, which is suffering today from a great deal of confusion and discrepancy. Third is to ensure value creation, equitable and transparent distribution of carbon credit revenue, and to create and or support 30 million jobs by 2030 and more than 100 million by 2050. On demand side, the initiative will seek to organize advanced market commitments, advocate to build demand for African carbon credits, raising awareness of the integrity and quality of differentiated credits, and opening access to compliance markets. I remember when I had a brief chat with Kate Hampton, who is in the room as well. First thing that came as reaction by her is basically about issues related to the integrity of the market and whether a good discipline is being put there to capture the value of such markets. I appreciate as well the work of many, not just the participants cited by Bugulu earlier, but others, including Rachel Kite and her work, Laurence Tobiana and their work on integrity with Ms. Buchner. So I have the habit of cutting my good sister Bugulu from time to time. I encourage her to reciprocate. We have a sign, a physical sign, that she has to stand first, and then she approaches the podium, and then she gets us out of her way, because she is an excellent time manager. But it's a good time as well to recognize her great work with the Africa team and the rest of the champions. And I saw Nigel topping, yes, yeah. And when we were in Gabon, I think he attended a very important meeting there to get us where we are today. So we are building on great knowledge, great work, and we are following international standards, but we're not forgetting the political economy dynamics and the initial conditions of our continent and our countries. And this is a great opportunity that we can really show that we can really do better when it comes to dealing with the main areas of finance and how finance can support climate action. Thank you so much. Have a great discussion today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Muhyiddin, COP27 champion, climate champion, and I would like to now introduce Mr. Joseph. Joseph. Yeah. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome. It's good to see you all, and it's very exciting to be here to be able to launch this Africa Carbon Market Initiative. As Dr. Mahmoud has said, it is one of the most interesting aspects of financing, and particularly climate finance, and we're very excited to be able to support, launch it, and see it contribute to driving the continent's climate agenda. Thank you. So, in terms of the Africa Carbon Market Initiative, it has been put together and has a wonderful steering committee of preeminent people, so government officials, industry experts, and other actors who are working hard to drive the agenda. If we go to the next slide, please. So as Mahmoud said, the market has been growing substantially. But even with that growth, it still remains a very small market. So while we're having 36% annual growth, the baseline has been incredibly low, which means that there's substantial opportunity for growth. And what we're seeing is that a lot of the carbon credits that have been accumulating so far have been in climate, have been in renewable energy, and land use. But we think there's substantially more opportunities for developing carbon credits, and that's what we'll be talking about today. Next slide, please. So we all know that there are very many different types of carbon credits. So I've talked about the energy, and I've talked about the land use. But on the continent, we believe that there are also opportunities in agriculture, in soil sequestration, in forest and land use, as well as blue carbon. Beyond nature-based solutions, Africa can explore opportunities in renewable energy as well. As I mentioned, we're already seeing some of that volume, but we can get substantially more if we arrange the methodologies and so on correctly. We will be excited to showcase some of these opportunities. Next slide, please. So what is already happening on the continent? We know that there are some projects that are already underway, including clean cooking, including renewable energy projects, including deforestation, and, as I mentioned, cook stoves or clean cooking. If we go to the next slide. It's not just about financing. So money is important, and it's a key part of climate finance to have the carbon market. But in addition to finance, the carbon market presents an opportunity to support in healthcare, so cleaner indoor air, in jobs, so whether existing jobs that have additional income or new jobs, and in livelihoods for individuals and families, pastoralists, and others. If we go to the next slide. So, yes, there's a huge opportunity in the carbon space, and we're working hard to capture that opportunity. But in order to do that, we've created the Africa Carbon Market Initiative. What are the objectives for the Africa Carbon Market Initiatives? And I see I'm being warned about time, so I'll be very quick. Our target is 300 megatons by 2030, and 30 million jobs by 2030 as well. We will also increase the integrity of the Africa carbon credits, in part to raise the prices. So today we see prices around $5. We would like to get that to $20 by 2030, which would get us to about $6 billion in revenue for the continent by 2030. And we would like to see that price increase to $80 a ton by 2050, which would generate a substantial $120 billion for the continent by 2050. And as I mentioned, it has the potential to generate up to 30 million jobs on the continent, and those are either new jobs or higher increase in income from existing jobs. And by mobilizing capital, we intend to support the African continent achieve three things. One is, of course, a lot more renewables in the system. Two, a lot more jobs, as I mentioned, 30 million jobs. And third, drive the climate agenda where we incentivize low carbon future for the continent. And with that, I will stop and hand back to Bukola.
To be clear, I wasn't kicking Joseph off the stage. It was just because I wanted for us to recognize His Excellency President Chakera as he was walking through the door. Welcome, Excellency. I knew that the information you are sharing, Joseph, is very important, and I was going to give you 1 more minute. Yes, so it was just to recognize His Excellency. And in the spirit of further radical collaboration, I would like to invite Damilola to also give us her welcome remarks and tell us why we're here. Damilola.
Oh, I'll just hold it then. Your Excellencies, heads of state, ministers here today, it is my great honor to be here launching the roadmap for the African Carbon Market Initiative. I'm very, very pleased because we don't often get stages like this where you have Africans and African leaders determining the future of Africa and also determining how to finance the energy transition. We have had a lot of support by a lot of different groups, especially the Global Energy Alliance for People and Planet, that believed in this and took this up. In the space of 3 months, this is what we've been able to achieve. So can you imagine what next year will be like? I also think we have to have a special thanks to Rockefeller Foundation as well for just their relentless kind of push for innovation as we move forward. So now I've said all of that, I think I also have to thank my ministers from my country, the Minister of Environment and the Minister of Finance, with all the other ministers, before we now go into the formal part of this. So building on what Joseph said, I want to stress that the African Carbon Market Initiative is committed to supporting high integrity credits, where an equitable and transparent proportion of revenues go to local African communities. This is very important. The African voluntary market would only succeed if people trust African credits and are driving real climate action and having a positive human impact. I've been saying for the last couple of days that it's important to note that when you buy an African credit, you buy so many co-benefits. If you take a woman from using fuel wood and you change her to a cleaner source of energy like e-cooking, you're literally saving her life. So there's a difference when you buy an African credit compared to anywhere around the world. Okay, I was going to say next slide. The African Carbon Market Initiative will focus on answering one critical question. How can we scale voluntary carbon markets across Africa? How can this be the new big export for the African continent? Together with our partners, and I'm happy to have the former president of Colombia here, who have been amazing over the last 3 months, to set the ambition for the initiative and develop a roadmap of actions to achieve these ambitions. To get to where we are today, we consulted with over 80 stakeholders across the voluntary carbon market value chain to develop, refine, and validate the key bottlenecks and shape the roadmap of action programs. And just to acknowledge His Excellency, the President of Ghana, President Ruto, thank you for joining us today. Oh, sorry. I'm so sorry. I can't believe, I'm so sorry. President Ruto of Kenya. Sorry. I was with President of Ghana yesterday. That is really my only excuse. I'm really sorry. A few critical challenges have stood in the way of our discussion and really making this whole thing thrive. Perhaps the first and foremost is there's a lack of supply on the continent. We have project developers that are quite small in scale, and we really need to make them significant. The second is many African countries have some regulation that pose a hurdle to carbon markets. For example, land tenure laws can complicate nature-based projects. And perhaps the largest challenge that comes on the supply side is the lack of validation and verification capacity within the continent. Most of the large verifiers are not within the continent, so it makes it very long process and very expensive process to certify and monitor. On the intermediation side, the biggest challenge cited is financing. Financing is critical to setting up a successful carbon credit project, given it takes years from starting a project to actually producing credits. And finally, we look at the demand. We see the challenges surrounding buyer perception and shifting trends. And we also look at the perception of risk in Africa, where people really need to come to Africa and see just the vast opportunity. So again, thank you for listening to me. We have, sorry, next slide. We have the actual roadmap that you can download now, and we would really like your comments and feedback. And after speaking to Mahmoud, we will make this also available in French and in Arabic for everyone to participate. And I'm very, very sorry again, President of Kenya.
His Excellency President Ruto, I think she just needs some of that really strong Kenyan tea to wake up a little bit. It's still too early, so please do forgive my co-conspirator, Damilola. With that, a warm welcome to you, President Ruto, President of the Republic of Kenya. Just to give a quick summary, we are here to launch the African Carbon Markets Initiative, which is aiming to build the foundations for a thriving voluntary carbon market ecosystem in Africa by 2030. Its 4 core objectives are to grow African credits by 19 folds, to ensure equitable and transparent distribution of carbon credit revenue, create and or support 30 million jobs by 2030 and more than 100 million by 2050 through the development of these quality carbon credits, mobilize up to 6 billion by 2030 and more than 100 billion per annum by 2050 through African credits. And I must state that on our side, when we got started, it was during the Africa Regional Forum, one of the 5 regional forums that were hosted by the climate champions in partnership with the regional economic commissions. And it came up that carbon markets was a very interesting sore point for African countries to have financing or to release financing for projects. And over and above carbon markets, we have about 18 projects that came out of that. And for that, I want to recognize our COP27 champion, Dr. Mahmoud Muhyiddin, for that idea, and Mr. Nigel Topping for also always being present. And at this point, I wish to invite another co-conspirator of ours, Jean-Paul Adam, who came in after we got started to also just give us and introduce the country commitments that we are about to hear about. Many of the countries here have been working tirelessly to develop their carbon credits. I want to pinpoint Gabon, and we will be hearing about that process. JP, over to you.
Thank you very much, Boholo. Your Excellencies, Presidents, and dear friends and partners in the ACME initiative, I'm delighted to be able to join you, even if slightly belatedly, and I apologize for that. So firstly, to say that there has been immense movement by African countries to engage on carbon markets. And in principle, we would like to especially recognize the efforts of Gabon. And the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa has also been supporting, in a wider sense, the Climate Commission for the Congo Basin, which is one of the regions which has the most opportunity to issue carbon credits. The United Nations Economic Commission for Africa has done assessments that have shown that if we are able to raise the price of carbon credits to an excess of $120, we'll be able to raise up to 82 billion US dollars annually across the continent, and we can achieve 30% of the total carbon sequestration needs for the world, 30% of the total carbon sequestration needs for the world by 2030 using African sequestration using nature-based solutions alone. So the commitments that are going to be made by African countries in the context of moving towards carbon markets and the development of carbon markets will be particularly essential. And developing a regional capacity as well through the Congo Basin Climate Commission is one way in which we can improve the integrity of carbon credits and ensure that they contribute towards global solutions, but which also lead to livelihoods and improvement of communities' situations on those who are on the front line of climate change, those that are being impacted by loss and damage, and where we need to make sure that the financing is flowing. That's my 2 minutes, Boholo. Thank you once again to all the presidents and all the delegations for their commitments to this initiative. Thank you.
Thank you, JP. I want to quickly point out, if you look across here, you have North Africa, West Africa, East Africa, small island state, and Southern Africa. So we represent the entire continent. And at this stage, I have the utmost pleasure to introduce and welcome to the stage His Excellency William Ruto, President of the Republic of Kenya, not Ghana.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. When I ran to become president of Kenya, I didn't know it includes Ghana. But let me also say, I apologize for coming in late because I was in another venue where I thought this meeting was going on. And I was about to read my statement there, and then I discovered it was the wrong place. I commend the various organizations, philanthropies, and private sector entities involved in the visionary efforts to establish and the progressive endeavor in launching the Africa Carbon Markets Initiative. I wish to express Kenya's strong interest in a strong partnership with the initiative, motivated by its desire to unleash the full potential of carbon markets as a means of supporting climate action, both in Kenya and across the entire continent of Africa. Kenya is already bearing the brunt of climate change, whose adverse effects now impact every aspect of our economies and livelihoods. The climate crisis further complicates national roadmaps towards socio-economic transformation and impedes the achievement of sustainable development goals in our continent. As I speak to you, Kenya is in the throes of a harrowing food insecurity caused by 2 consecutive years of failed rain. Most of the country has been affected, and we have had to provide emergency relief to 4.3 million citizens to prevent suffering from hunger and starvation. Kenya, and by extension, the Horn of Africa, is experiencing the worst drought in 40 years. Prevailing trends in the global warming signals that even more difficult times lie ahead on account of associated climate crisis. I stand here to make the strong case that despite all this, we in Africa, and more specifically in Kenya, are more than just climate victims. I wish to persuade you that our strengths by far surpasses our weaknesses, and that our potential to make substantial positive global contributions overwhelmingly exceed our need for assistance. Our people have the potential to play a unique, indispensable, and globally significant role in the prevention and mitigation of emissions, protection of crucial ecosystems, and the restoration of precious carbon sinks. The urgent actualization of this critical intervention offers humanity its best chance of prevailing in the existential contest with climate change-induced catastrophe. The good news is that the world has a golden opportunity to rapidly achieve these objectives by developing a robust, transparent, and sustainable mechanism through which a carbon credit market can yield attractive income and development opportunities for communities at the front line in the fight against climate change. We will align incentives among polluting producers and sequestration enterprises to achieve net zero industrialization and shared green prosperity. Kenya is already a leader in the generation of carbon credits in Africa, accounting for over 20% of Africa's volume over the past 5 years. Although we are just getting started and the scale remains modest, the beneficial impact of the nascent carbon credit regime holds tremendous promise. A portion of the proceeds from these credits have been invested towards funding clean cooking and solar home systems. The dividend of the emerging circularity exemplify the vision of the global conservation movement. I am pleased to share encouraging news of an exemplary Kenyan project, which is the first and largest in the world, focusing entirely on soil carbon removals through sustainable grazing management. It is on course towards its inspiring target of removing up to 50 million tons of carbon dioxide from the ecosystem over the next 30 years. All evidence and projections indicate that we are still only scratching the surface of Kenya's potential. Some estimates suggest that by 2030, Kenya will be generating over 30 million tons of carbon credits annually, thereby earning hundreds of millions of dollars as incomes and creating hundreds of thousands of green jobs for our young people. These resources, promised under this demonstrably feasible scenario, would accelerate a range of initiatives in areas such as landscape restoration, expansion of forest cover, tree growing, clean cooking, and agroforestry. To actualize this vision and unlock potential, we require carbon markets that actually work for ordinary people in African communities. These markets will become reality under frameworks that prioritize the rapid and significant reduction of transaction costs. Currently, 80% of value of some green credits are captured by intermediaries, leaving only a fraction for the communities undertaking the actual hard work on the ground. It will also be fundamental for us for such framework to effectively define methodologies and approaches to properly recognize and reward a broader range of measures through which Kenya, and indeed other African countries, contribute to fighting climate change. It is imperative to also develop modalities for the proper valuation of existing carbon sinks before they fall under imminent threats, such as deforestation and other forms of degradation. We recognize that our expectations are massive, but the opportunity before us is tremendous. We can, and indeed must, rise to the demands of the moment and seize it with both hands. Kenya therefore looks forward to working with initiatives such as the Africa Carbon Markets Initiative in substantially expanding carbon markets and carbon credit opportunities in our country and throughout the continent of Africa. I thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. I was very pleased to hear that yesterday in your statement you shared that Kenya's next significant export will be carbon credits, and we hope that ACME will be part of the plan to making that happen. And with great pleasure, I would like to introduce and welcome to the stage His Excellency, President Lazarus Chakwera, the President of the Republic of Malawi, not Namibia. President Chakwera.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, but amongst the excellencies, I just want to make mention, I have my own former president of Malawi, Madam Joyce Banda. Thank you. In the spirit of Pan-Africanism, I suppose we all belong everywhere and are part of everywhere on the continent. And so we are grateful. Good morning, everyone. Like other African countries, Malawi is experiencing the devastating effects of climate change. But it is our rural communities, in particular, that are being hit the hardest. They are now regularly under the threat of hunger and disease occasioned by climate change-induced drought, unclean water, and unclean environments. If these rural communities are not supported, they will not survive. As I speak, 3.8 million rural Malawians need food assistance. And so our social protection program has almost doubled to cushion 7 million Malawians with some form of social security package. To sustain this kind of support, resources must be generated, and so we are keen on pursuing voluntary carbon markets and the carbon credit projects they support to not only drive emissions reduction and climate impact, but also raise the resources vulnerable individuals and communities need on the ground. This is why we are excited to partner with the African Carbon Markets Initiative to scale carbon credit production across the continent and impact millions of lives. Already, Malawi has introduced key climate regulations such as the National Climate Change Management Policy and the National Resilience Strategy to strengthen the country's resilience and reduce emissions. As part of these efforts, Malawi has also been engaging with carbon markets, notably through the National REDD Plus program. We are therefore excited to collaborate with ACMI to build on these efforts, creating a truly comprehensive plan that unlocks an end-to-end carbon credit ecosystem in Malawi. Since 2015, there have been various projects in agriculture and energy in pursuit of building this ecosystem. And as a result, last year alone, a total of 600,000 tons of carbon credits were produced. But Malawi's potential is huge, and we have only scratched the surface, with opportunities ready to be unlocked in clean cook stoves and waste management solutions. We want to expand these projects. We plan to expand these projects. We will expand these projects. Our target is to scale our domestic generation of carbon credits up to 5 million carbon credits, more than 8 times our current production, and thus mobilize up to $100 million and support more than 250,000 jobs. We are therefore eager to work with ACMI and take full advantage of the opportunities for partnership emerging from this initiative. Malawi is ready. Thank you for your attention.
His Excellency, thank you. If you may please just join me on the seat. Thank you. Thank you, Your Excellency, President Lazarus Chakwera. And at this moment, I have the greatest of pleasure to also welcome one of our very important co-conspirators. I say that because we really started ACME on his head, if I may say, working off of the work that they had already started and put tireless man-hours into. Minister Lee White, the Minister of Environment in Gabon, and also representing here President Bongo. If you may join me on stage, please.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everybody. It's amazing to see serving presidents and former presidents in the audience. It just shows how important this event is. When we think about what the challenge is before us, hydrocarbon emissions are about 36 billion tons every year. The total CO2 equivalent emissions on our planet are about 52 billion tons per year. And our carbon markets are tiny today, so we have to grow them. Ideally, we need 50 billion tons of carbon credits out there for sale if we're going to deal with this climate crisis. I'll just give you an example from Gabon. Somebody said that it takes a long time to create these credits. Well, 17 years of negotiations in this forum, UNFCCC, to get to the point where sovereign nations are putting REDD+ credits onto the markets. Gabon has just submitted and had approved, actually, by the UNFCCC, 90 million tons of REDD+ credits. Because we are a carbon positive nation, thanks to our forests, our forest management, that means that we've increased our net sequestration of CO2 by 90 million tons. That means that our REDD+ credits are absolutely additional. That's one of the code words we use in REDD+. Because Gabon is a high forest, low deforestation country, to achieve 90 million tons of REDD+ credits, we absorbed 1 billion tons of CO2 out of the atmosphere, net. 1 billion tons removed from the atmosphere. And because my president, who unfortunately had to leave yesterday but sends his regards, because my president is so engaged on both climate and conservation, our carbon credits are biodiversity positive. And I think that's the next frontier. We have carbon credits, but Africa surely should be the experimental site where we develop biodiversity credits, ecosystem service credits. So our vision in Gabon We think that the voluntary markets are very important, but we also think that sovereign responsibility for these markets is also critical. If we're going to get from the small numbers that we were seeing on the presentations to the big numbers that we need today, we need sovereign carbon, and we need to nest project-based, so voluntary carbon, underneath the sovereign reporting to make sure that we don't have double accounting, to make sure that we don't have leakage, to make sure that we have integrity. In Gabon, we absorb 100 million tons of CO2 out of the atmosphere every year because of our ecosystems. Whether we're absorbing carbon into forests, into savannas, into soils, as you said, Honorable President, soil carbon is actually one of the most stable forms of carbon. So if you can absorb 50 million tons into your soils, then that is stored for a very, very long time. So I really believe that we can use nature-based solutions in Africa. We can also use the just energy transition. We can make our cities more climate adapted and so on and so forth. But I think nature-based solutions is the real competitive advantage of Africa. We should be able to generate billions and billions and billions of tons of CO2 by preserving our ecosystems, by restoring our ecosystems, by reforestation, by enhancement. And I think this is a great event this morning that can perhaps catalyze the beginning of that process, working together to suck billions of tons of CO2 out of the atmosphere. Thank you.
Thank you. Just have a seat. Thanks, Minister. Thank you very much, Minister Lee White, Gabon's Minister of Water, Forest, the Sea and Environment. Thank you, and because their Excellencies need to leave, I would like to request the climate champions, both Dr. Muhyiddin and Nigel Topping, Joseph Damilola Simon, to come back on stage and let's take a picture and excuse the presidents for their next engagement. JP. All the partners, please, of the project. If we could stand, please. Thank you for a picture. President Banda. President Banda, if you could also join us. Minister. If we can.
What's that? Yeah.
Oh yes, my God, President Duque. Completely forgot. Please. May I ask President Duque to join here? Yes. Thank you. Okay.
Have a good one.
Thank you very much,
Okay, my
President,
dear.
for
Thank you.
engaging me.
Thank you.
Boholo from
Thank you.
Botswana. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, President.
What's
Yes.
that? As always. Mr. President.
Thank you, Madam. Thank you very much. I interrupted regular programming for this very brief photo op to mark the launch of the African Carbon Markets Initiative. And I would like to apologize to all of you for running a little over time, but we are now going to speed up things as it is very difficult to hurry up precedents. But at this stage, I would like to welcome our hosts here from FRA and EGX. I know the teams are leaving. They're here, okay. From FRA and EGX, I would like to welcome Mr. Mohammed Farid and Rami Eldakani. As the presidents are leaving, I would still like to have your attention, and I sincerely apologize to both Mohammed Farid and Rami for a disruption in the speaking. If you're not leaving with the presidents, kindly remain seated. Thank you. And so both Mohammed Farid and Rami will introduce the Egyptian Exchange Partnership with the Egyptian government. Mohammed.
So, good morning, everyone, and I know it would be a little bit tough to grasp your attention with all the commotion running around, and after the long speeches and nice words being said by presidents, former presidents, Dr. Mahmoud, and everyone who spoke today. Today, I believe it's a historic moment because linking the dots between the different players in the African carbon market is very, I have to say, very tough. And we started this idea maybe a year and a half, a couple of years ago, whereby we started tinkering with the supply side, the intermediation, and the demand side, as you have seen. And we found that the challenges are quite immense. It's not an easy task to be able to develop carbon markets that ultimately has the sufficient integrity to ensure the proper pricing. One of the benefits of the carbon markets in Africa that it ticks more than one box. It's not only about carbon dioxide reductions and providing finance for companies, for farmers that manage to convert their farms and issue carbon credits, but it supports as well in poverty alleviation. It ticks that box. It supports as well in gender equality, given the participation of women in the different projects, and hence the importance of developing African carbon markets. Integral African carbon markets is of paramount importance if we believe things to be developing and moving forward, and to provide access to finance to those entities. The challenge has been mentioned today, but I reiterate it, and I'll leave afterwards the floor to the EGX to be presenting their case. The challenge is indeed in the verifiers and validators for the different projects. Not having them on the ground in Africa is creating some excessive costing for the different projects. And we, as the Financial Regulatory Authority of Egypt, which is the non-bank financial regulator for the entire non-bank financial service, we will be working extensively through the IOSCO on synchronizing all regulatory frameworks across Africa as much as possible to create unified, or at least well-synchronized policies and well-synchronized requirements for the verifiers and validators. There is a route. We'll educate all our partners on the route to achieve being a verifier and validator, to reduce the significant cost in that regard. The ultimate point is to ensure that the market is integral, there is sufficient integrity, and to ensure that there is no greenwashing. And this is the ultimate point, that as a regulator we are going to manage. Ultimately, pricing and disclosures will be discussed by my colleague at the Egyptian Exchange that is providing the platform for ACME. Thank you very much, and I hope I managed to grasp your attention after the nice introductions. Thank you again. Cheers.
Yes.
Good morning, everyone, Your Excellencies, welcome to our country. I'll try to be as brief as possible. We're establishing platforms for the need of transparency, the need for this transparency and integrity in carbon credits, specifically for African carbon credits is key at this point of time. We need to stress the importance of fair and just pricing for African credits to be placed at par with global carbon credits. No more deep discounts for African credits. In order to do that, we need to ensure smooth access to liquidity, and ensure that the value created reaches local communities in our African countries. Disrupting the current business model is key. We have to utilize Today, we are now taking many serious steps in launching the African VCM, and hopefully we have that up and running before mid-2023. We want to avail it to all our African countries, our African neighbors, our African friends. It's from Africa to Africa, and we do agree that we're going to see a lot of potential, and Africa as a continent will be one of the major supply pipelines for carbon credits globally. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rani. Thank you both. And rushing through my program, I wish to also welcome to the stage Minister Mohammed Abdullahi from the government of Nigeria.
Well, I'm grateful I'm not part of the conspirators, but I like positive conspiracy. And I suspect the MC had a different kind of conspiracy, a lighter mood. It is South and Eastern African conspiracy to make West Africa speak after the presidents have left. So it gives me great pleasure to be here with you, share my perspective on the African carbon market and express Nigeria's commitment with a humble population of 210 million people to this growing voluntary carbon market initiative. Last year, at COP27 in Glasgow, Nigeria's President, Muhammadu Buhari, announced Nigeria's commitment to net zero by 2060 on the basis of a detailed energy transition plan. This plan, the first of its kind in Africa, highlights the significant scale of resources required to attain both development and climate ambitions by 2060. The plan prioritizes the need to deploy solar capacity at an unprecedented scale, amounting to 5.3 gigawatts additional capacity per year until 2060. The plan also showcases a pipeline of priority projects, including renewable solar independent power plants, scaled decentralized renewable energy projects, and gas flare commercialization opportunities, to name a few. These projects complement other initiatives we are spearheading, aimed at recovering degraded land for Sahara and the Sahel, such as the Great Green Wall. To shape carbon markets, Nigeria aims, or is rather pioneering, innovative climate finance solutions that will benefit Africa and the world. One of these solutions is the production and sale of carbon credits, which have enormous potential for Africa. In support of this, Nigeria has enacted the climate change law alongside the initial governance framework and launched the Nigeria Emission Trading Scheme in collaboration with the UNDP. In addition, the federal government is also developing a carbon credit activation plan. This plan will clearly identify responsibility within the government for the regulation and promotion of carbon credits. I will outline a set of actions government can take to support the industry. I know you're coming over. I'll summarize. Nigeria's carbon credit potential is therefore concentrated in household devices and forestry sectors, both of which will attract significant benefits. Household devices such as solar lanterns and clean cookstoves contribute to expanding energy access and improving health outcomes, while carbon forestry credits enable the conservation of Nigeria's rich biodiversity and support sustainable livelihoods. Our policymakers are increasingly recognizing a just transition as key not only to ensuring equity in climate policy, but also in building market structures that incentivize climate action, such as well-functioning carbon markets. Therefore, this event, which crystallizes the development of the Africa climate market, is central to building and maintaining market incentives for climate and clean energy action. I sincerely thank you for your kind attention. I guess it's here, right?
It's okay. I got it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So, thank you. Minister, I want to assure you, there is no conspiracy. The presidents were supposed to be here longer. They would have heard most of the program, but unfortunately, they had to leave, and they informed me as I was sitting there. For the next round of the program, it will be moderated by Joseph Nganga of GIEP, and he will introduce President Duque and Mr. Nigel Topping, and similarly with the buyers. So we've brought in the suppliers and the buyers in order to make sure we are driving for implementation. Over to you, Joseph.
Thank you, Poholo. We are running quite short of time, so we'll make it very, very compressed. And I'll move things around if you allow me. Nigel and Your Excellency Duque, if you allow me, I'd like to move things around. If we could take 3 minutes with the buyers, you know yourselves, please, on stage. So we've heard from countries that they're willing to have carbon credits and they're going to develop the systems and the structures. We've heard that there are projects and there are opportunities, and we've heard what this can do for the continent. But who's buying these carbon credits? And so we want a couple of people to tell us whether they're in or out. The exciting thing is I have it in full confidence that we have a few $100 million in commitments towards buying African carbon credits. But I will let the buyers themselves speak for themselves. And rather than the pre-planned program, this is going to be very tight. Each of you has 30 minutes to tell us who you are, what organization you work for, and why this is exciting. And as I can see, we're all very excited. Shall we start from that end and work our way this way?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. My name is Lina. I head up sustainable finance for the West for Standard Chartered Bank. So we're very delighted to be here. We strongly believe that there is a position and a market for carbon credits for VCM in Africa. And we have actually been quite active in that space with our CEO chairing the task force for scaling voluntary carbon markets. We have a carbon markets development desk that's particularly focused on developing these markets. Our head of that team was elected as a board member to the Integrity Council, which is a body that's setting standards for voluntary carbon markets. And we have worked with several countries on developing their own carbon markets as well. We strongly believe that promoting the integrity of African credits is actually going to have a huge impact on the demand for African credits and will also lead to eventually an increase in the price. And this is what ACME is, one of the things that ACME is doing, developing these principles to ensure that the projects are of high quality and of high standards. We would still require, obviously, some of the things that we would look for will include the third-party verifications and validations from global standards and bodies such as the ICVCM. And we would expect the project developers to have clear, transparent reporting as well. And we think that this will help catalyze the development of new projects that will attract more demand than older vintages as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very exciting, but we ran over a little bit. I'm going to start a timer. Next person, please.
Okay, the pressure's on. Can you hear me? My name is Marin Madras. I'm head of environmental strategy and advisory at Vertree. We are an integrated carbon solutions provider owned by Hartree Partners, which is an energy and commodities trading firm with over 25 years of experience in physical and financial markets. So our activity in the voluntary carbon space is really strategically aligned with ACME in that we've been dedicated to scaling the VCM and really see that potential in Africa where there are also significant socioeconomic benefits that can be delivered to communities. Through our activities, from directly financing emissions reductions and removal projects to risk management, advisory, and downstream selling as well and buying, we've really helped to be developing this market globally. We've been at the forefront of some of the market infrastructure development and really hope to bring this to the African continent as well. So this is really the beginning and look to leverage this partnership to bring in more buyers, mobilize more volume and monetary-based commitments, and build on this launch to generate increased awareness. Thank you very much.
55 seconds. Next one. Let's get to 30 seconds.
Hear me? Excellent. My name is Riham Al-Gizi. I'm the director responsible for voluntary carbon market in Saudi Arabia. I just want to say something. If we step back and look at the voluntary carbon markets, a world without a voluntary carbon market is a world without a meaning for resources or financing for removal credits. And this is what we keep forgetting when we talk about carbon markets. It's like what Dr. Mahmoud mentioned and everybody else is about financing those projects that are uneconomic without those carbon credits as a revenue stream. It's very exciting to see ACME scaling the market, scaling the supply, and we would like to see more, keen to see the development and the progress point forward.
Hello, can everyone hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. My name is Anoki. I am the environment lead at Yellowwoods. Yellowwoods is a shareholder in a number of large operating businesses that are both African and global, and we are really delighted that one of our businesses, Nando's, is a founding buyer within the ACMI initiative. Nando's has been on a decarbonization journey across its sort of 21 geographies in which it operates. And we are purchasing 100% of our carbon credits from Africa for the residual. And we believe that demand must have the same amount of integrity as supply. And we're really excited because we feel that this is an important way to get finance to the continent and to generate livelihoods adjacent to protecting carbon sinks and developing a whole bunch of new low carbon infrastructure that the continent desperately needs. So we're very proud to be part of this initiative. Thanks.
Hello. My name is Ilya. I'm very happy to be here today and to represent ETG, Export Trading Group. We are a large-scale, vertically integrated agricultural enterprise with a very strong footprint in Africa. We're present in over 20 countries, and essentially for the decades we've been working together with farmers and consumers supplying agricultural inputs, logistics, and consumer goods in Africa. And aside from being a nascent project developer, where essentially we aim to create carbon as a byproduct for our farmers, and we'll be unveiling this program later this afternoon in the Innovation Zone. We also absolutely wanted to show our commitment on the demand side for our fellow project developers and basically to show support to the wider voluntary market in Africa. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's very clear that they are buyers, they have money, and they have their checkbooks. So let's get them some carbon credits to buy. Thank you very much. While they walk off stage, I would like to invite Nigel. I would like to invite His Excellency President Duque and Dr. Shah, if he's still here. We've lost Dr. Shah. So, Your Excellency, please.
Well, thank you so much. It's a great honor to be in this very important and historical moment. What I want to highlight this morning is that the African Carbon Market Initiative is also launching today a very important concept. And these are the biodiversity credits or the nature credits. And this is a major tool because of multiple reasons, but I want to highlight three of them. The first one, even if the world decided to shut down in a second all that we consume from fossil fuels will still be lagging in accomplishing the goal that we have towards 2030 and 2050, primarily because there are more than 12.5 gigatons of emissions that are coming from negative land use. So conservation of nature is a must. And the second thing that I want to highlight is that 69% of world wildlife has been lost in the last 4 decades. So in order to contribute to the reduction of emissions by fighting deforestation and at the same time protecting the species, we have to put together as a source of raising funds and giving funds to the rural communities, the nature credits and the biodiversity credits. So this is one of the most important elements of the African Carbon Markets initiatives, because African countries will be able to present not only projects related to conservation, but at the same time of the protection of species. And I think this will offer a new opportunity, a new development within the market, and this will be a great message for the buyers around the world. So as former president of Colombia, and as the president of a country that passed from 14% protected areas to 34% protected areas within a period of 4 years, and as the head of a government that developed a carbon credit mechanism that today is one of the most vibrant in Latin America, I feel proud of being a member of the steering committee of the African Carbon Markets Initiative and be able to today, with my good friend Antonio Antonioli from Vera, to say that the nature and biodiversity credits is today becoming a reference model for the world. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Your Excellency. We are learning a lot from Colombia, and we are very grateful for your being very involved and very hands-on with this. The reason we are able to do this work and do it really fast is because GIAP has been set up by philanthropy to be able to accelerate this kind of initiatives. Rockefeller, Bezos, and IKEA. I would like to acknowledge them. Dr. Shah was here, but had to leave for another engagement. But all this work is led by someone, and that person is the GIAP CEO, Simon Harford. He will say 2 words, and I must let him say 2 words, otherwise I'll be out of a job. Simon?
Joseph, thank you. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Very briefly, I want to congratulate all of those who have brought ACMI from nothing to this in 3 short months. It is extraordinary, all of you who've made this happen. ACMI is also a great example of how the Global Energy Alliance tries to support. ACMI is from Africa, by Africa, and good for Africa. It's multi-country collaboration across the continent. It's a coalition of each partner playing to their strengths. It's fast, it's innovative, focused on very high integrity, and it will unlock large amounts of private sector finance. So where next? As Egypt is challenging us so correctly, it's about implementation, implementation, implementation. So we look forward to seeing how ACMI chooses to structure itself going forward to be sustainable, enduring, a nimble, multi-country, robust, long-lasting organization. And my message to everyone, including the ACMI team, is that the Global Energy Alliance stands alongside all of these African initiatives to see how we can support your agenda, your development with clean energy. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. There we have support. Nigel, and while Nigel is walking up to the podium, I would like to announce that the next session is Bloomberg and the French government, and they will be talking about how driving delivery on Paris commitments through data. Nigel will conclude us.
Thank you, Joseph. Thank you, everybody, for staying with us. I want to say a couple of things about the nature of this project. This initiative, I believe, is an exemplar of the way that the UN climate architecture is evolving. You know, when the high-level champions were mandated in Madrid to come up with a plan for how we could improve the links between non-state actors and state actors, we presented that in Glasgow and it was enthusiastically welcomed. And it particularly emphasized three things that we'd focus on. One, regionalizing, particularly in the global south. Two, elevating adaptation and resilience to be much higher profile. And three, mobilizing finance. So I think that ACMI embodies all three of those principles. As Simon eloquently said, very much Africa-led. It's been great to see all the African partners here, very much focused on mobilizing finance for resilience. As Mahmoud would say, importantly, this means finance, climate finance as a driver of development, not just as a driver of decarbonization. It takes its place alongside a growing number of similar Africa-led initiatives like AFR 100, the African Green Hydrogen Alliance, the Nairobi Declaration, which we'll hear more about later in the week. So I'd just like to say I really welcome the roadmap, the clarity of the bold goals. I'd encourage the buyers to explore the idea of a floor price. A predictably rising floor price is one of the things which makes the investment case much easier for everybody. You can look at inflation-linked floor price ratchet like they have in California, or just as a pre-published floor price, but it removes a lot of uncertainty on the downside. I'd encourage everyone to read the report. There's some great lighthouse projects in the report which speak to the need for us to not just think about the finance, but the human capacity development that's needed on the generation side. So with that, I'd just like to end by thanking all of the partners. This is a great example of radical collaboration. I'll probably forget some, but I've just SE for All, GIAP, Rockefeller, UNECA, it's great to have President Duque there. The links with Latin America. Maybe we can hope to have a Latin American carbon markets initiative and an Asian carbon markets initiative launched by COP28. And let's make sure that when we meet again in a year's time in Dubai, we have a panel of buyers with 10x the millions of dollars pre-committed, and a panel of countries with their own very clear plans, so that we're getting the integrity and the supply and the demand matching, so that we get what the initiative is seeking for, a large, liquid, high-integrity African carbon markets. So with that, I'd like to close the event and thank you all for your attention.